because I realized we've been rambling on for a bit. But the reason why Shoy and I are talking is because the sixth full-length album of De Profundis, The Corruption of Virtue, is out now, and like Shoy said, it's on Transcending Obscurity. But I have to ask you. I mean, I know you. I'm glad you mentioned it's been April last year since you kind of released delivered the masters at least. How does it feel now that the album's finally released and you're getting to like read the reviews? Because that's been happening for a bit also, right? The premieres and stuff.
Yeah, so it started off with, look, I'll be honest with you. I'm always very, very nervous. Even though this is our sixth album, I'm always nervous when an album comes out. Because look, I mean, I obviously, love what we do and everything, but, you can't help but being a bit nervous. How is it going to be received? And particularly, I felt a bit more pressure than last time, because the Blinding Light of Faith obviously got a lot of rave reviews, and we did really well with it. So there was a lot of pressure probably on ourselves to actually deliver something that sort of lives up to the previous album. So I was, and the problem is, when you deliver the album and then there's this long gap, you start questioning things as well a lot more. Because if you deliver the album and the album's out within 3-4 months, you haven't had time. It's, the wheels are in motion. You haven't got time. But with this one, like, because it's been gone for so long, you do start questioning a lot of things. Like, oh, is it as good? Is it, or did we mess up a bit here and all that? So now that we're seeing the reviews, obviously for everybody else, it's fresh. So we're like, wow, okay, this is great. And I'll be honest with you, I'm quite overwhelmed by it. Like Paul, the other guitarist, we were talking about it the other day, that we're really, really pleased. Like, the reaction has been better than the Blinding Light of Fate, which is to say something, because that did get a lot of rave reviews. And obviously there was the added package in there that we had a change of bass player. And I think in lots of other metal bands, maybe that wouldn't be such a big deal, but with us it is, because Aaron McSporran obviously is a big name as well. Yeah. And he was a big shoes to replace. But Steve, I've said this before, there was no plan B. There was only one plan, is to get Steve in the band, because we've known Steve for years. Actually, the only guy in UK, whenever Aaron couldn't do a show, who would dip in for Aaron, the only guy in the UK who could play those lines was Steve. So the moment Aaron went, we decided to part ways with Aaron. The only person that we knew could do it and should do it is Steve. So it was a big and the good thing is Steve and Aaron know each other very well. They're very good friends. So even Aaron said the same thing. He said, look, guys, if I go, Steve, you need to get Steve in, because he's the only guy who can do this. So we're very pleased that Steve is, especially for Steve, that the bass is getting a lot of recognition. I'm very pleased with that.
Yeah, and I have to quote the Metal Wanderlust editor, Joel, because his comment when he found out that I was going to talk to you, he asked me to ask you if the bass player teaches lessons on other planets. I think that's open to invitation.
Brilliant. Steven's going to be very happy. Yeah, he's something else, isn't he? Yeah, he's an amazing bass player, and and he's been really a great friend for many, many, many years. So, like I said, it wasn't even a transition. It was the sense that it was a natural thing to have Steve in there, and we're very, very, very lucky to have that, because I'm not going to lie, there was even at one point when we were sort of discussing about, and just to clear it out, between us and Aaron, there's literally no problem. It's very adult. Actually, as a matter of fact, Aaron was here a few weeks ago. We had a lovely coffee and all that. It's just, we just went different ways because he's quite busy with other projects. And I think musically, we were starting to sort of move into different directions. De Profundis really wanted to carry on more in a traditional death metal kind of, a type of music, whereas Aaron wanted a bit more of the prog side to re-emerge. So it was a bit of a natural sort of ending, really, and but no hard feeling. Like I said, I speak to Aaron pretty much on a weekly basis still. So, but like I said, we did even consider for a bit, should we actually change the way the bass is approaching De Profundis and make it more of a simpler kind of traditional metal bass playing? But when Steve said, "Yeah, I'll do it," we just said, "Great," And we literally, this happened, about 3-4 weeks before recording. So we gave him full, we said, look, dude, it's your gig now. You do whatever you want with this. So there was no bass lines. All the bass lines you're hearing on the album are Steve's bass lines. Aaron hadn't actually, so we told Steve, look, Aaron, whatever Aaron's written, we want you to come up with your own things, because it's your thing now. So it's all his stuff. I think he was a bit shocked as well that he got asked to play so many solos as well. He jokes that he got to play more solos in this album than he's ever done in any of his jazz gigs. So, which is good.
But I have to ask you, I mean, like, considering, because I do remember your band from the late 2009-10 when you all played in India. Hold that thought, I'll come to that in a bit. But the transition that you all had from, the doom sound, because I still remember, by the way, finding your CDs here in the CD stores in India. And that was kind of cool to see also, because there weren't that many like metal CDs available.
No, there weren't,
India, right? But tell me about that transition, and tell me again, with Steve coming on board, how you all kind of decided that it's going to be. Because for those who've been following the band would have noticed like an evolution in the sound in there. And again, now it's further cemented, right? Because I remember Kunal sharing your previous album with me, right? The Kingdom of the Blind. And I was like, hang on, like, is this the same band? Like, these guys are done something very different. And now you'll have kind of cemented that sound, if I may use the term, on the corruption of virtue. So tell me about that entire transition and also just like Steve becoming part of that sound, right?
Yeah, so the transition was, I mean, it's a mix of things really, because for me personally, from the generation I come from, because I'm an old guy, the generation I come from, when I listen to albums from back that time, like, so if we talk in the late 80s, 90s, no two albums. I mean, look, one of my favorite bands, for instance, is Death. And there's a huge difference between Scream Bloody Gore and the Sound of Perseverance. There's a massive difference. And very much those differences, I think, were dictated, one, by Chuck's vision, but also by the musicians he would end up having in the band. I think there's definitely sort of your sound will change, especially if you're involving everyone in the songwriting. And if it's not just one guy writing everything, you are going to feel that evolution coming in. So I think with us, there's an element of wanting to always evolve. There's always been that we don't want two albums to sound the same. But there's been the change of lineups, and also, so when we first started up with Doom, which was Craig, our singer, wanted to do a doomy kind of band. But I think he realized very quickly because I came in about a year into the band. So the band was formed in 2005. I came in 2006. And he realized very quickly that somebody like Shoi is not that interested in playing slower stuff. I've always liked faster stuff. That's always been my thing. So I think, and also then the ideas I was bringing naturally were pushing towards faster stuff and slightly more technical stuff than our then guitarist Roman. So I think for a couple of albums you felt, I mean, even if you go back to an album like the second one, Oblique Reflection, which I was the first album I actually contributed a lot. The first one, most of it was written when I joined in. You'll see there are moments in there are songs in there where the doom is going away and you are starting to sense slightly more technical things creeping in. By the time we did The Emptiness Within, the third one, this definitely was a move, because there are certain tracks on there that were pretty challenging to play. And we were, even though people were still calling us Doom, we were definitely moving away. We were in a slightly more melodic kind of death kind of vibe at that point. And then Roman left and Paul joined us on guitar. And that was, I think, the big turning point, because we told Paul we don't want to write a Doom album. Because to be fair, there was an issue with us being Doom, because the Doom fans never thought we were Doom. And the fans of death metal kept saying that we were Doom without even checking us out. And a lot of the times it would happen, they'd check us out and go, actually, this is not really that Doom. So why are you guys called Doom? Say, yeah, because the first couple of albums, maybe we were a bit doomier. But we were definitely more what I would call at that point the more progressive death metal kind of, which is sort of the more, I would say the mid-period Opeth kind of vibe that we had. But by the time Paul came in, we said, look, mate, we just want to write a death metal album. We're just going to have great guitar solos, some technical playing, but we don't want to be tech death, because I think that's the other thing, the danger. We don't want to be tech death, because tech death is a complete, it gets the death metal term, but it's not really death metal as the way I see it. Again, I see technical death metal to me is something like the Latter Day Death. Is, that's the kind of stuff, or Atheist, those kind of bands. It's more the kind of influence that I'm talking about. So by the time we did Kingdom of the Blind and Paul was in, and part of the reason we separated with Roman is because he was struggling to actually play a lot of the stuff from his point of view, because he wasn't really that kind of a guitarist. He had a lot of good feel and all that great feel Roman had, but he wasn't really into the technical stuff, whereas Paul is. So that was a helpful thing. And I think the other thing from a songwriting point of view, Craig has been trying to push us to write more direct songs, because I think in that time as well, we started touring a lot more, and we realized what works live and what doesn't work live, and what really gets people going. And it is more the direct song. The long songs and all that maybe doesn't actually, it's great to listen to them, but live, they don't actually come across that well. So I think that's the one thing we did, we started trimming a lot of the fat out of our songs, make them a little bit more simpler, but not making them easy. Simpler, but not easy. That means the arrangement are a bit more sort of, streamlined. So I think that's really been, been a natural kind of evolution. But if you listen to every album, you feel it could have gone either way. We could have carried on with the more slowy melodic doomia kind of stuff, or we went the other side, which was always there as well, but we just maybe didn't have the tools to exploit that well. So, and on this album, I mean, one thing that I'm seeing a lot, which is cool, is I'm hearing a lot of people saying this is definitely De Profundis' angriest album. I agree, and I think it's partly to do as well with like the frame of mind I was in when we wrote this album. So just to give you a bit of background, I'm sorry, I'm rambling on, but basically when we started writing this album, we just came off the tour with Terrorizer. We did a 3-week tour with Terrorizer. So that had a bit of an influence, because I think that's, when you're touring with bands, we did like the more direct approach, but also had just lost my mom as well very suddenly. So I was in a very much of a weird kind of mind space at that point, and pretty angry kind of mind space. So a lot of the songs came out straight away a lot angrier and faster and all that. So I think that's when people are noticing that, I'm quite pleased, because I think an album is a representation of where you were at a certain point in life. So, and it's great to see and it's great to see people are responding to that, and it's an angry album because I think it's also got finished at the time when things were generally around the world were a bit weird as well. So I think it's a nice little soundtrack to what things have been. It has been an angry time, a bit of a uncertain time, angry and everything. So anguished times. So I think that's what the whole album is meant to be, really.
Yeah. And, don't worry about the rambling on. I mean, that's the entire
cool
part of doing a podcast, right? But I totally understand, and I can kind of resonate with the angriness on there. And I think, hey, if it's not angry, it's not pissed off, it's not death metal, right? Like, you don't want
exactly
it to be like, the reason you listen to death metal is to kind of just like burn off that kind of steam in a positive way, I would say, in there. And one of the things I wanted to understand, because like, let's be honest, any band that's kind of released music in the last 8 to 10 months has got this question, like, if it wasn't for the lockdown, would this album come out? And from what you're telling me, this was already kind of in the process way before the lockdown, right?
Yeah. So this one actually, so just to give you a little background, we started recording the drums about 3-4 weeks before the UK went into lockdown, because I think we went a bit before India. And just to put it in perspective, the day Boris Johnson announced we're going into lockdown, so that we were going to go into lockdown the next day, I think, Paul was over at my place here finishing the guitars, and literally he finished off his guitars at 11 o'clock at night. I dropped him off at his house, and we said goodbye to each other, saying, don't know when I'm going to see you, because next, now we're all sort of confined. So, and we didn't know how long for. It was all just like, wow, quite surreal, to be honest. When we put ourselves back in that, it was quite a surreal thing. And so this was basically, we're talking about March 2020, right? That's when oh my God, already nearly 3 years. It was March 2020. So I'll be honest with you, for about a few weeks after that, everything slowed down a bit. No one was really motivated. So then I got back into the whole thing and said, look, I'm going to start writing some solos, because that was the only bit that was left. So we'd done all the drums, we'd done all the guitars, rhythm guitar. What we hadn't done at that point was the solos. And obviously we gave Steve a bit more time because he just joined the band. So Steve was still working on his bass. And then we eventually got vocals recorded September of that year in 2020. Vocals and bass were all done by. So by September 2020, we were done. So it wasn't too bad. We didn't have a layoff of too long. It was tricky, I'm not going to lie, to get ourselves motivated, because we were like, is this album ever even going to come out now?
Yeah.
Because God knows, are we even going to have an industry after this? Because, you know, it did feel like that was the end of the music industry, because that's an industry that got hit pretty badly. So when we actually did deliver the album, it was a great feeling, but it was always gonna, you know, we were already working on the album for a long time. So we weren't one of those bands that sort of did the album during lockdown. We didn't. We were already ready.